Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza is brought to you by Sport Relay. Honest, unbiased, and apolitical. Sport Relay, your connection to the diamond. And by A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, Volumes 1 and 2 by Evan Thompson. Relive the glory, the complete history of the Major League Baseball Playoffs. This week on Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza, we go through the rankings as of the end of Week 4 of the 2025 Major League Baseball season. We go through the top stories from the week in the world of relief pitching. We go through the weird game of the week, a wild one at Wrigley Field. And we speak with special guest Martin Gallegos, athletics beat writer from MLB.com. Stay tuned because Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza begins now. Welcome to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. I'm your host, Evan Thompson. We have just completed the fourth week of the 2025 season. Our statistics include all games through the end of play on Thursday, April 24th. Let's take a look at some of the biggest stories from the past week in the world of relief pitching. The New York Mets have been absolutely dominant at the end of close games. As you will soon see in our rankings, they have the number 2 middle reliever and number 2 setup man in the National League, those being Reed Garrett and AJ Minter. They have the number 6 closer in the National League, Edwin Diaz. They have another setup man in the top 10, Ryan Stanek. And Huáscar Brazoban and Max Kranick rank 11th and 12th, respectively, among National League middle relievers. As a team, they rank number 1 by a significant margin. As you will see when we list the team rankings, their team score is a massive outlier, 50% higher than the second place team on the list. Whether it's sustainable remains to be seen, but it's been fun to watch. Not as fun to watch has been the incredible free fall of the Arizona Diamondbacks relief corps. At the end of Week 3, they ranked 3rd in both the National League and the majors as a unit. But a rough week saw them fall to 6th in the NL and 11th in the majors, largely due to their studs being unavailable to pitch either because of injury or overuse. That brings us to our weird game of the week, when the Diamondbacks faced the Cubs at Wrigley Field on Friday, April 18th. This game right here kicked off their struggles. Now before we go through this, just a heads up, we will use some stats that some of you might not be familiar with. I've put a link to the glossary in the description box below this video. You can pause the video and read up on the stats. I've also made another video that goes through the stats and explains why we use them. Links to that will be provided both on the screen and in the description box. We don't use them for the sake of, hey, look at these cool stats we know, but for the sake of painting the most complete picture we can of how relief pitchers and relief units are performing. Now, to the game. When this game entered the bottom of the 7th, the Cubs led 2-1. The game wasn't anything super unusual. Julian Merriweather pitched around an errant pickoff throw to notch a scoreless top of the 7th, picking up a goose egg in the process. Let's look at the checklist. It was in the 7th inning or later. His team led by 1 run. He pitched 3 outs, and he did not allow any run of any type, earned, unearned, or inherited, to score. But we saw complete relief meltdowns in the next 3 half innings. In the bottom of the 7th, the Cubs increased their lead to 7-1 after Diamondbacks reliever Ryan Nelson coughed up 5 earned runs, 4 from an Ian Happ grand slam. Bryce Jarvis stopped the bleeding by getting the last out of the inning. On to the top of the 8th, where Jordan Wicks took the hill to protect a 6-run lead for the Cubs. He did not even record an out, yielding 3 straight singles. In came Porter Hodge with the bases loaded and nobody out. He coughed up a grand slam to Eugenio Suarez. Since the tying run was not on base or at bat when he entered the game, that was not a broken egg. The Diamondbacks scored 3 more runs before he left the game. Ethan Roberts relieved him with runners on the corners, 2 outs, and the Diamondbacks leading 8-7. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. welcomed Roberts to the game with a 3-run homer. Suarez lined out, retiring the side. Now leading 11-7, Bryce Jarvis took the mound again for the bottom of the 8th. He plunked Nico Horner, walked Pete Crow Armstrong, and gave up a homer to former Diamondback Carson Kelly. Then he struck out Justin Turner before giving the ball to Joe Manaply. Why Manaply? Because A.J. Puck, Jalen Beeks, Ryan Thompson, and Justin Martinez were all unavailable due to their innings load from the 3-game road series against the Miami Marlins, and Shelby Miller was being saved for the 9th. Manaply gave up a single, 2 straight homers, and 3 straight singles before striking out Crow Armstrong and getting Kelly to ground to second. Manaply gave up 3 earned runs, but it wasn't a broken egg. Why? Let's look at the checklist. When he entered the game, the score differential was what it needed to be, but there was 1 out and nobody on base. In order to pitch 2 outs but get a goose egg, there must be at least 1 runner on base when the pitcher enters the game. If it's impossible to get a goose egg in an inning, then a broken egg is also impossible. So, in summary, in that inning and a half, Cub and Diamondback relievers combined to give up 21 runs on 20 hits, walking 4, striking out 6, and hitting a batter. 6 of those hits were home runs, 2 grand slams, 2 3-run blasts, a 2-run shot, and a solo shot. The Cubs hit the home run cycle in their 2 times at bat. And despite all this wreckage, there were no broken eggs. Ryan Presley came in to close out the game for the Cubs in the top of the 9th. He worked around a 2-out double by Alek Thomas to pitch a scoreless 9th and close out the win. Since the Cubs led by 2 when he entered the game, and he pitched all 3 outs of the inning, it was a goose egg. Amazing. We'll go through the team power rankings when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. Here are our Team Relief Corps power rankings as of the end of Week 4. Statistics run through the end of play on Thursday, April 24th. They include every pitch thrown in relief by a player wearing that team's uniform, excluding position pitchers. This table shows the scoring breakdown. Teams are ranked in clutch, run prevention, base runner prevention, and command, weighted as shown. The final score determines the ranking. 0 means right at league average. Positive is better than average, negative is below average. And a score of 100 means the team is 100% better than the league average. A score of 50 is 50% better. A score of negative 50 is 50% worse, and so on. We'll start with the number 30 team and work our way to number 1, which you already know is the New York Mets. AL teams will appear in red, NL teams will appear in blue, and the number in parentheses after the team name is their rank within their specific league. So if it says like New York Mets, parentheses 1, that means they're number 1 in the National League. Here we go. Our first group is pray for a blowout win. This includes 4 teams. At number 30, with a score of negative 30.1, is the Washington Nationals. Number 29, with negative 28.8, is the Tampa Bay Rays. With a score of negative 27.5 is team number 28, the Colorado Rockies. And number 27, with a score of negative 27.2, the St. Louis Cardinals. The next group, stock up on Tums, has 3 teams. Number 26 is the Atlanta Braves, scoring negative 24.8. At number 25, with negative 20.7, is the Minnesota Twins. And at number 24, with negative 19.8, is a team that has typically ranked near the top in our ratings the last 2 years, the Milwaukee Brewers. In the lots of work to do group, we have 4 teams. Coming in at number 23 overall, the Chicago White Sox. Their score was negative 12.92, which we rounded to negative 12.9. Number 22 is the Philadelphia Phillies with a score of negative 12.91, rounded also to negative 12.9. 21st, with negative 12.1, is the Detroit Tigers. And with negative 8.9, number 20, the Baltimore Orioles. We've now reached slightly below average, a group of 3 teams. At number 19, the Los Angeles Angels, scoring negative 3.6. Number 18 is the Boston Red Sox with negative 1.7 points. And number 17 with negative 1.4 is the Chicago Cubs. The next group, slightly above average, has 4 teams. Number 16 with 3.9 is the Kansas City Royals. Number 15 with 5.6 is the Texas Rangers. Coming in 14th with their score of 6.23 rounded to 6.2 is the Los Angeles Dodgers. Number 13 with their score of 6.24 rounded to 6.2 is the Cincinnati Reds. Now for the very good. The number 12 Toronto Blue Jays with a score of 11.6. Number 11 with a score of 16.2 is the Arizona Diamondbacks. By the way, we mentioned their free fall. At the end of week 3, their score was 77.6, and now it's 16.2. Ouch. At number 10, with a score of 16.5, is the Athletics. And at number 9, with 19.9, is the New York Yankees. That brings us to the next group, which we call Better Take an Early Lead. This foursome contains the number 8 Pittsburgh Pirates with 21.1. Number 7, the Houston Astros with 23.4. Number 6, with 26.1, the Seattle Mariners. Rounding out the group is the number 5 Cleveland Guardians with a score of 27.5. The Guardians also have the top score in the American League. Now for the elite. Number 4, with 47.2, is the San Francisco Giants. With a score of 67.2 is our number 3 relief corps, the San Diego Padres. Coming in second with a score of 76.3 is the Miami Marlins. And our number 1 team is the outlier, the aforementioned New York Mets, with a mind-boggling 114.5. We'll be right back with our guest, Martin Gallegos. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. We are here with the first guest in the history of our show, Martin Gallegos of MLB.com, who has covered the Athletics. What is this, your 8th season now covering them? 7th with MLB.com?
Yeah, yep, we got it.
So, I mean, you'll be hard-pressed to find anyone who knows more about that team than Martin. He is in the inner circle of experts. So, Martin, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Evan, thanks for having me. Good to be seeing you virtually for the first time in a while, so it's good.
Yeah, same here, man. I do miss you guys. I wish I could get up there more. We're going to start off. Yesterday was a big day for the Athletics with the debut of Nick Kurtz. You got to have day one of the Nick Kurtz experience. How was that?
Yeah, it was exciting. I think obviously it's something that a lot of people were anticipating for a long time. I think we all knew it was going to be a fast rise for him through the minors. I don't think we expected it to be this fast. I think he kind of pushed the issue with how well he was performing throughout the minors, and just yesterday, being in the building, there was certainly a lot of suspense with every pitch of his first at bat. It just seemed like you kind of hear a pin drop as each pitch was about to come, and everyone was just like hoping he could get that first hit out of the way. And sure enough, that first at bat in the first inning, he smokes a 112 mile per hour fastball or 112 mile per hour single into right field for a RBI. So got the first hit, got the first RBI out of the way, and his family was there. It was a cool moment, and the A's won, and it was just kind of played out about as well as it could have for a guy's major league debut. A nice early lead, handed it off to the pitching. They close it out, and the A's come out on top. So they're 1-0 in the Nick Kurtz era.
There you go. And along those lines, the back end of the pen all got in there yesterday, and every one of them was perfect as far as run prevention goes.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how the A's envision winning a lot of games this year is, getting 5 or 6 solid innings out of their starter and then handing it off to the back end with guys like Tyler Ferguson, obviously Mason Miller, and we saw Mitch Spence in that role yesterday. He pitched in that seventh inning and looked pretty good. And just talking to Kotze after the game, he mentioned that Mitch Spence, that's kind of a role that he feels real comfortable in him performing. That seventh inning role, kind of before getting it to Ferguson as a setup man and Mason Miller as the closer. He's part of that bridge to getting it to the ninth, and he's performed really well. He's pitched in a lot of roles. He's done multi-inning roles. He's closed out some games that have been a little bit they've been ahead by more than 3 runs, but he could do it all. He could start obviously, so I think he's a very valuable piece for this A's bullpen.
Yeah, and with the injury, well, first off, Jose Leclerc, his performance has been rather disappointing so far, and then we found out he had that injury. Can you give us a health update on Leclerc?
Yeah, so it's a lat strain, which was a little different from the shoulder soreness that they thought it initially was. So, he's shut down from throwing right now. That's all we know so far. He's going to get a second opinion next week in Texas when the team is actually in Texas to place the Rangers. He's going to go visit a doctor that I think he trusts out there. He knew him from a long time for pitching with the Rangers, and you got to get that second opinion, see exactly what's going on in there. And unfortunately, it doesn't sound great. You never want to go see a second opinion. So, my guess is he's definitely going to be out a while. You hope it's not a major surgery like thoracic outlet or something like that, but it's obviously a possibility with this type of injury. So I think the A's are just kind of waiting to see what the final diagnosis is, and then he'll make a decision. And they'll have to maneuver their bullpen a little bit. Obviously, he was a guy who was brought in to be kind of that seventh, eighth inning guy, and his velo was down from the jump, which now kind of makes sense that maybe he was pitching with this injury for a little bit, and maybe he didn't know the severity of it. And now they got to kind of shift the bullpen a little bit, but they've got some guys who they feel pretty good about stepping into those roles.
Yeah, and you mentioned Spence, and I remember during spring training, manager Mark Kotze told both you and me that their goal with the pen was to have everyone except Miller be able to go 2 innings. And with the A's not having another off day for quite a while, they have 15 games before their next off day. Is this something that you can see helping them manage the pen through this stretch without completely gassing guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think this probably looked at this stretch as one of the ones where, you know, building these guys to go a little bit more than 1 inning is going to help us for stretches exactly like this. They got a lot of games coming up, and they added some fresh arms yesterday with Grant Holman and Hogan Harris coming up as well. So I think they're kind of preparing for what's going to be probably a grueling stretch, especially if they're winning ball games. They're probably going to have to count on that bullpen a lot to come in and pitch some big innings. So I think they're fully equipped to do that so far to this point. We've seen a couple of guys. We've seen Noah Murdoch do 1+. Obviously, Mitch Spence has done it plenty of times. I mean, Ferguson could do it. I mean, even Mason Miller can do it if he needs to. So all these guys are equipped to do it. They haven't done it a whole lot yet, but I think during this stretch, I wouldn't be surprised if we see multiple guys come in and go 1+ in these games coming up.
And part of why they haven't done it a lot yet is they really haven't had to, correct?
Yeah, yeah. They've kind of had some games stretched out. Their wins have been stretched out. They've had some games where they've blown teams out. They've been blown out. It's kind of up and down, but once you get kind of into that stretch of games where they're all pretty close, you kind of can envision the workload being a little bit more built up, especially when there's no off day in sight for a couple of weeks.
Okay, now let's talk a bit more about Mason Miller. For people who haven't seen him pitch much on TV and haven't experienced him in person, what's it like when Miller comes in a game to close it out from that point until he finishes the job?
Yeah, it's electric. I mean, it's you kind of stop everything you're doing and you just watch, because it's just incredible seeing this guy come out throwing 102 and just nasty sliders everywhere. And you feel like the game is over already before, once he comes into the game, you're like, okay, I'm going to go down to the clubhouse in like 5 minutes because he's about to wipe these dudes out. And it's been like that every outing so far this season. It's been, he's been just particularly dominant, just, every single time he goes out there. Striking everybody out. He was close to an immaculate inning in Chicago, I think, which I really thought he was going to get it. I think he was like two pitches short, but yeah, it's just, and he's doing it a little differently this year. He's not just overpowering guys. He's throwing a lot more sliders, which I think is kind of fooling hitters even more because they're obviously kind of gearing up for that 102 to come their way, and when they get a first pitch slider, I think it all kind of throws their whole approach off. And he's just so fun to watch. Obviously he was an all-star last year. Early on here, it's looking like he's without question, as long as he hopefully stays healthy. I think we're going to see him in Atlanta for the All-Star game again this year. I mean, he's looking. It's early on, but he's looking even better than last year, really.
That's amazing because last year I remember he was turning heads all over the league. I wasn't covering the A's last year; I was covering the Rockies. But when I went to Oakland for that series and I saw Miller come in the game, it was, yeah, it felt electric, like you said, and I was just like, oh, nobody's hitting that, and I talked to, I'm not going to say who it was because it was just a private conversation, but somebody who is a former major leaguer talked to me, and I asked him what it was like to see him. He goes, no way, nobody's hitting that guy unless he hangs a slider. I mean, that's just not happening. And this guy had faced some of the best closers in the game, a couple of guys who were in the Hall of Fame, in fact. Um, and along those lines with Miller, I saw Rivera pitch a game in person. I don't think you're old enough to have seen Rivera pitch in person. Are you?
I don't think I did. I mean, obviously I watched him a lot
Yeah.
on TV, but I don't think I saw. No, maybe not. Yeah, I don't think I saw him in person.
And when he came in the game, I felt like the game was over, but it didn't
Yeah.
feel electric. Hoffman, when he came in the game, I saw him in San Diego, felt a little more electric and felt like the game was over, but it
Yeah.
wasn't like Miller. So, with Miller, if you the rankings we have as of right now, he's fourth in the AL with closers, but that's because he hasn't had a chance. The stat that we use that matters the most is the goose eggs, and he only has four, whereas the guys ahead of him have all pitched in more games than he has. But if we do, and I cut off minimum of six appearances for AL closers, Miller is number one in WHIP, and he's number one in K percentage minus walk percentage. Doesn't surprise you at all, I'm sure.
No, no. That's kind of one thing. Even when he came up as a starter, was he throws hard, and a lot of times those guys don't have command, but he's actually always had really good command. Of his pitches. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, which obviously to be a closer, I mean, you kind of that's ideally what you want. As much as you want a guy who's throwing 103, you don't want a guy walking the bases loaded in the ninth, and he generally does a pretty good job of staying around the zone. Sometimes that's kind of his one time when he gets hurt is maybe he's around the zone too much, and he might leave a slider over the plate a little bit, but he's got a great grasp of the strike zone. He's always had that, which is kind of rare sometimes for a young guy, but he seems to have mastered that side of pitching. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me to see that number low.
Okay, now let's talk about Ferguson a little bit. He's much older than Miller. I mean, he's had quite a path through the majors. I think he was what 30 last year when he debuted.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so but Ferguson has also been nails. His whip stats and his K minus walk percentage stats aren't what Miller's are, but whose are. But he does get the job done when he comes in setup. And we have him fifth right now in the AL setup man rankings. Probably doesn't surprise you there either, right?
Yeah, no, I think we all expected him to have a really good year just based on what he did last year. He was really good, and I know relievers. You never kind of know. It's obviously very volatile. Some guys could be good one year and not good the next, but he really was really consistent last year. And really, what kind of stood out to me about him last year was when Mason Miller went on the IL. He kind of stepped into that closer role and really didn't miss a beat. He handled that closer role so well. And that was such good experience for him. Obviously, I mean, he's obviously had a lot of experience in the minors and under other leagues, but to get that closing experience at the major league level, I think that helped him out. And now kind of settling back into that setup role. I mean, he'll get some save opportunities whenever Mason Miller's not available. And I think as good as Mason Miller is, Tyler Ferguson's not too far behind in terms of the trust that Mark Kotsay has in his relievers. He definitely is not afraid to bring in Tyler Ferguson in whatever situation, whether it's seventh, eighth, ninth, whenever you need a big out. I think he trusts him to get the job done.
So the A's, there are a few other teams with this, but it's really pronounced with the A's. The A's have a great back end, but their middle relief is not quite as strong. What have you seen in that regard?
Yeah, I think they're trying to shore that up and see what they have in some guys. Obviously, a guy like Noah Murdoch, he's been up and down. He's had some really good outings. His debut stands out as one that was really incredible against the Mariners. He came in with runners on and was able to stop a rally and then pitch it. He went 1+ that night, which again we talked about that earlier. All these guys gonna be able to go 1+ and but they've tried to kind of mix and match. Obviously, like with the moves they just made, brought up Grant Holman and Hogan Harris. Those guys could be part of that middle relief mix as well. But I think they're still trying to identify, which guys they kind of will utilize in those middle innings to kind of be, after the starter comes out, if maybe they don't go six, who can kind of bridge that gap and help us get to those high leverage guys in the seventh, eighth, and ninth.
All right. Well, is there anything for people who aren't really familiar with the A's? Anything you want to let them know about the A's pen that we haven't already gone over?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's one of the more I would think I haven't seen all the pens in baseball too much, but I mean, just based on the arms in this one, I mean, starting with Mason Miller and then going down, it's a fun group. Even a guy like Noah Murdoch, he's very funky delivery, long armed guy. He's fun to watch. Mitch Spence, kind of a jack of all trades guy. So it's a young bullpen with some inexperience, but definitely a lot of electric stuff in there, and a team a bullpen that I think can get even better. Michelle Otani is a guy who's coming back from the IL as well. He's a guy who throws 98, 99 as well, and he could be a high leverage guy for this team at some point. I think he's going to start a rehab assignment next week with Single A Stockton. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in about a week, 2 weeks or so back up here, and he'll be another electric arm. He's kind of like in the Tyler Ferguson form where he throws hard, maybe not as good of command as Ferguson, but definitely a guy who you will see in that seventh inning, seventh, eighth mix as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Martine. It was great having you on here. Hope we can have you back soon.
Yeah, anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza. It is time for the top finishers in individual power rankings after week 4. Statistics include every game through the end of play on Thursday, April 24th. To qualify for the rankings, there is a minimum of 6 relief appearances. A link to our ranking methods is in the description box below this video. First is the AL middle relievers. As of the time we recorded this and made these stats, again, end of play Thursday, April 24th, these guys were considered by us, after careful consideration, to be middle relievers. That's how we categorize the pitchers. So it may have changed between then and the time you are now watching this episode. Without further ado, here we go. AL middle relievers. Number 5, with 41.3, from the Baltimore Orioles, Brian Baker. Number 4, with 43.46, comes from the New York Yankees, Fernando Cruz. At number 3, from the Houston Astros, scoring 43.51, Steven Okert. Number 2 with 49.4 from the Minnesota Twins, Danny Coulombe. And number 1 from the Kansas City Royals with 79.3, Hunter Harvey. Now the NL middle relievers. Number 5 comes from the St. Louis Cardinals with a score of 40.65, Kyle Leahy. With a score of 40.67 is our number 4 NL middle reliever from the Milwaukee Brewers, Nick Mears. Number 3 is from the Arizona Diamondbacks with a score of 42.7, Jalen Beeks. Next week he's probably going to be set up, but he's middleman right now. At number 2, with a score of 48.6, from the New York Mets, Reed Garrett. And number 1 from the San Francisco Giants with 63.5, Randy Rodriguez. Turning now to the American League setup men. Number 5 has 73.2 points. From the Athletics, Tyler Ferguson. Number 4 with 76.5 from the Texas Rangers, Chris Martin. Number 3 with 81.0 from the Kansas City Royals, Lucas Erceg. Number 2 with 89.3 from the Boston Red Sox, Justin Slayton. And number 1 by a large margin with 113.1 from the New York Yankees, Luke Weaver. He also might be in a different role next week. Devin Williams is not exactly having the best of seasons so far. Now for the NL setup men. At number 5 with 73.1 from the Chicago Cubs, Julian Merriweather. Numbers 4 and 3 both come from the Cincinnati Reds with 75.06, Tony Santillan. And with 75.14, Graham Ashcraft. Both were rounded to 75.1. At number 2, with 87.7, from the New York Mets, A.J. Minter. And number 1, also by a large margin, with 116.5, from the San Diego Padres, Jason Adam. To the AL closers, number 5, from the Los Angeles Angels, and with 92.4 points, Kenley Jansen. At number 4, with 93.2 points, as mentioned earlier, from the Athletics, Mason Miller. Number 3 comes from the Toronto Blue Jays, with 94.6 points, Jeff Hoffman. Number 2, with 124.5, from the Houston Astros, Josh Hader. And number 1, with 143.7, from the Seattle Mariners, Andres Munoz. And finally, the NL closers. Number 5, with 66.0, from the San Francisco Giants, Ryan Walker. Although he's been struggling recently. He may not be closer for much longer, but he's closer right now. Number 4, with 69.2, from the Washington Nationals, Kyle Finnegan. Number 3, with 88.8, from the Arizona Diamondbacks, Justin Martinez. Number 2, from the Philadelphia Phillies, with 89.7, Jose Alvarado. And number 1, by a large margin, with 135.1, from the San Diego Padres, Robert Suarez. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. That concludes this installment of Reliever Roundup and Bullpen Bonanza from Sport Relay. Join us next time when we reveal our monthly reliever awards for March and April. I'm Evan Thompson. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Click subscribe so you'll never miss an episode of this show or of our other show, Trade Trees. Tell your friends and baseball contacts. If you haven't done so yet, consider buying my books, A Complete History of the Major League Baseball Playoffs, Volume 1 and Volume 2. There are links in the description box below this video. And finally, bookmark and regularly visit sportrelay.com. Until next time, this is Evan Thompson saying so long for now.